Hare Krishna everyone, we're continuing to read The Science of Self-Realization, the book by His Divine Grace, Srila A.C. Bhakti-Vedanta Swami Prabhupada, Chapter 5, Practicing Yoga in the Modern Age, and this section is called Meditation and the Self Within. It's a conversation between Mr. Fail, or Fail, how do I pronounce it, and he is the interviewer of the Durban Natal Mercury and Srila Prabhupada. Mr. Fail, is the Krishna consciousness movement growing? Srila Prabhupada, oh yes, very much. You may be surprised to know that we are selling books in the tens of thousands. We have about 50 books, and many librarians and college professors are very appreciative of them, because until their publication there was no such literature in existence. It is a new contribution to the world. Mr. Fail, Krishna consciousness seems to involve shaving the head and wearing saffron robes. How can an ordinary man caught up in family life practice Krishna consciousness? Srila Prabhupada, the saffron robes and the shaven head are not essential, although they create a good mental situation. Just as when a military man is dressed properly, he gets energy, he feels like a military man. Does that mean that unless he is in uniform, he cannot fight? No. In the same way, God consciousness cannot be checked. It can be revived in any circumstances, but certain conditions are helpful. Therefore, we practice that you live in a certain way, dress in a certain way, eat in a certain way, and so on. These things are helpful for practicing Krishna consciousness, but they are not essential. Mr. Fail, then one can be a student of Krishna consciousness while going about normal daily life? Srila Prabhupada, yes. Mr. Fail, how about drugs? Can they help in the progress of God realization? Srila Prabhupada, if drugs could help God realizations, then drugs would be more powerful than God. How can we accept that? Drugs are chemical substances which are material. How can something material help one realize God, who is all spiritual? It is impossible. What one experiences from taking drugs is simply a kind of intoxication or hallucination. It is not God realization. Mr. Fail, do you think the great mystics down through the ages have actually seen the spiritual spark you mentioned earlier? Srila Prabhupada, what do you mean by mystic? Mr. Fail, it's just a name given to people who have had an experience of another level of reality. Srila Prabhupada, we don't use the word mystic. Our reality is God realization, which occurs when we come to the spiritual platform. As long as we have a bodily concept of life, our understanding is sense gratification, because the body is made of senses. When we progress from the bodily platform and we see the mind as the center of sense activity, we take the mind as the final stage of realization. That is the mental platform. From the mental platform, we may come to the intellectual platform, and from the intellectual, we can rise to the transcendental platform. Finally, we can rise above even the transcendental platform and come to the mature spiritual platform. These are the stages of God realization. However, in this age, because people are so fallen, the Shastras, scriptures, give the special recommendation that people come directly to the spiritual platform by chanting the holy names of God. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. If we cultivate this practice on the spiritual platform, then immediately we can realize our spiritual identity. Then the process of God realization becomes successful very quickly. Mr. Fail, today a lot of people are saying that we must look inward for the truth rather than outward into the world of the senses. Srila Prabhupada, looking inward means knowing that you are a spirit soul. Unless you understand that you are not the body, but a soul, there is no question of looking inward. First, we have to study. Am I this body, or am I something within the body? Unfortunately, this subject is not taught in any school, college, or university. Everyone is thinking, I am this body. For example, in this country, people everywhere are thinking, I am South African, they are Indian, and they are Greek, and so on. Actually, everyone in the whole world is in the bodily conception of life. Krishna consciousness starts when one is above this bodily conception. Mr. Fail. So the recognition of the spiritual spark comes first. Srila Prabhupada. Yes. Recognizing the existence of the spirit soul within the body is the first step. Unless one understands this simple fact, there is no question of spiritual advancement. Mr. Fail, is it a question of just understanding it intellectually? Srila Prabhupada, in the beginning, yes. There are two departments of knowledge, theoretical and practical. First, one must learn spiritual science theoretically. Then, by working on that spiritual platform, one comes to the point of practical realization. Unfortunately, today almost everyone is in the darkness of the bodily conception of life. Therefore, this movement is very important, because it can lift civilized man out of that darkness. As long as they are in the bodily conception of life, they are no better than animals. I am a dog, I am a cat, I am a cow. Animals think like that. As soon as someone passes, a dog will bark, thinking, I am a dog. I have been appointed here as a watchdog. Similarly, if I adopt the dog's mentality and challenge foreigners, why have you come to this country? Why have you come to my jurisdiction? Then what is the difference between the dog and me? Mr. Fail, there is none. To change the subject a little, is it necessary to follow certain eating habits to practice spiritual life? Srila Prabhupada, yes. The whole process is meant to purify us, and eating is part of that purification. I think you're saying, you have a saying, you are what you eat. And that's a fact. That's a fact. Our bodily constitution and mental atmosphere are determined according to how and what we eat. Therefore, the Shastras recommend that to become Krishna conscious, you should eat remnants of food left by Krishna. If a tuberculosis patient eats something and you eat the remnants, you will be infected with tuberculosis. Similarly, If you eat Krishna prasadam, then you will be infected with Krishna consciousness. Thus, our process is that we don't eat anything immediately. First, we offer the food to Krishna, then we eat it. This helps us advance in Krishna consciousness. Mr. Fail, you are all vegetarians? Srila Prabhupada, yes, because Krishna is a vegetarian. Krishna can eat anything because he is God. But in the Bhagavad Gita 9.26, he says, quote, "If one offers me with love and devotion a leaf, a flower, fruit, or water, I will accept it." Unquote. He never says, "Give me meat and wine." Mr. Fail, how about the tobacco question? Srila Prabhupada, tobacco is also an intoxicant. We are already intoxicated by being in the bodily conception of life, and if we increase the intoxication, then we are lost. Mr. Fail, you mean things like meat, alcohol, and tobacco just reinforce bodily consciousness? Srila Prabhupada, yes. Suppose you have a disease and you want to be cured. You have to follow the instructions of a physician. If he says, "Don't eat this, eat only this," you have to follow his prescription. Similarly, we also have a prescription for being cured of the bodily conception of life. Chanting Hare Krishna, hearing about Krishna's activities, and eating Krishna prasadam. This treatment is the process of Krishna consciousness. Jai, we have completed chapter 5. Tomorrow we shall start chapter 6, entitled Finding Spiritual Solutions to Material Problems. And the first section is called Crime, Why and What to Do. Thank you so much for tuning in today. The link to this book is in the description. Check out our website, shravanamdiaries.com, and we shall see you tomorrow. Hare Krishna.